On this week's NFV SDN Reality Check, we look at some of the top news items from the past week, as well as speak with Tech Mahindra about tips for CSPs in deploying SDN and NFV. Thanks for joining us on this week's NFV SDN Reality Check. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief at RCR Wireless News. On today's show, we have an interview with Manish Singh, who's the VP of Product Management of SDN and NFV at Tech Mahindra, on deployment tips for telecom operators. But first, let's take a look at some of the top headlines from across the telecom-related NFV, SDN, and cloud and software space from the past week. A recent report from 451 Research claims enterprises will continue to evolve their storage needs and usage in 2016, with most corporations surveyed stating plans to increase overall storage spending this year. A significant portion of that increase is set for public cloud storage services, with the Voice of the Enterprise survey results noting at least a doubling in spending across the segment over the next 2 years at the expense of traditional on-premise storage. Additional insight from the survey also showed storage spending will likely be healthy in 2016, with more than 70% of respondents expecting to increase spending this year compared with 2015. However, spending in Europe by very large corporations, governments, and utility verticals is expected to lag the average. Public cloud spending is set to account for 17% of total enterprise storage spending by 2017, an increase from just 8% today. Conversely, on-premise storage spending is set to dip from 70% in 2015 to just 58% in 2017. Among storage vendors, traditional providers like EMC, which is set to dominate the market, will see increased competition from the likes of Amazon Web Services and Microsoft by 2017. Also this week, Juniper Networks said it has entered into an agreement to purchase BTI Systems in a move to bolster its optical, SDN, cloud, and software business. Juniper said the deal will allow the company to speed up the delivery of open and automated packet optical transport solutions integrated with its Northstar controller. With BTI's technology, the platform is said to be able to offer network management features supporting end-to-end provisioning of new services. Financial terms of the deal were not released, though Juniper did say it did not expect a material impact on its finances. The deal is set to close by mid-year. Juniper last year was the center of rumors concerning a possible acquisition by Ericsson, which analysts said needed to bolster its own portfolio to encounter Nokia Networks' acquisition of Alcatel-Lucent. However, Juniper's asking price of around $10 billion at that time was thought to have been too much for Ericsson, which instead signed a partnership later in the year with Cisco in a move thought to have negatively impacted Juniper. Now to our featured interview for this week with Tech Mahindra, where we discuss some NFV and SDN deployment tips for telecom operators. Let's take a look at the interview now. Well, thanks everyone for joining us this week. This week we are joined by Manish Singh, who's the VP Product Management of SDN and NFV for Tech Mahindra, to talk a bit about this exciting virtualization space. So hey, Manish, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate that.
Great. Well, maybe start off with maybe a little overview of the company itself, maybe how you guys participate in this NFV and SDN space when it comes to telecom operators, just in case those who might not know much about what you guys do.
Absolutely. So Tech Mahindra, we have made strategic investments in SDN and NFV. We've established a business practice around SDN and NFV and bringing in our offerings around 4 key areas. One is around design and development services, the other one around testing and certification, then systems integration. That's a big piece of what we do. Mm-hmm. And then last but not the least, once the virtualized networks get rolled out, offering managed services around that. For the company itself, the big focus is telecom infrastructure. We offer a wide-ranging services within the telecom infrastructure, both to CSPs, the communication service providers, as well as to CTPs, the communication technologies providers.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. So good. Well, maybe start off with, I guess, what is your view or the company's kind of view of where we are perhaps in the market today? Because it does seem like, NFV and SDN have definitely had a lot of attention over the past couple of years, a lot of kind of ramping up of the technologies, the standards, things like that. It does seem like we're to the point now where perhaps operators are starting to deploy the technology to an extent in some of their networks. What's your view, I guess, of where you see the market, at least today, in terms of telecom's development and deployment of NFV and SDN?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, when I see and I think about SDN and NFV, and how the market has evolved, I tend to think of it in three phases of a market evolution, from initiation through ideation all the way to implementation. And then if you really go back in time, October 2012, that's where the industry initiated with that seminal white paper from leading service providers coming out, and the formation of ETSI-SIG, all that good work kicked off the SDN and NFV industry. And also good work coming out from the academia, Stanford and other places. So all that was good initiation. But then after that, if you look from 2013 onwards, the industry has been in this ideation phase. Rather, it reminds me of a Infonetics survey, for example, that came last year, 2014, that was talking about that 90+% service providers want to start rolling out services by 2015. Mm-hmm. And here we are at the end of 2015. And if you look around, I mean, broadly, I think it would be still fair to say the industry is still in that ideation phase. And we haven't seen things jump from ideation to implementation at scale. Mm-hmm. And that's where we from a Tech Mahindra see that there is a critical need for vendor-neutral, vendor-agnostic system integrators to come in to really bring that scale and bring that speed to this network transformation and really drive the overall implementation. So really bring speed to this real network rollouts and network transformation. Yeah. That's how we see the market has been evolving and where we are at this stage.
Well, I mean, that's a good point, because it does seem like you're right. I mean, I know leading into 2015, like you said, there was so much talk about 2015 really being a big year for this technology. And we did see a lot of POCs out there and a lot of work being done, but it did seem like, perhaps the hype was perhaps a little ahead of time there. And so we weren't quite ready to really make that big jump yet. I guess as you look back at the year, I mean, were there anything significant that kind of slowed that progress? Or do you think it was just a matter of, this is a very, this is a big technology evolution for these operators? I mean, this is, a data centers is one thing, but for a telecom operator to make a jump to virtualization, that's a huge move for those guys. Was it just, I guess, was it more expected than perhaps we were thinking going into the year, that there would be a little more of a delay process in terms of moving beyond the idea phase into kind of getting the stuff actually moving?
Well, I mean, when we talk about a network transformation with SDN and NFV, and if you really take a close look, it's a major transformation. We're moving from what used to be a traditional physical network function-led, appliance-led way of building the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. We're talking about shifting from that to a very, as you said, cloud-like way of building the infrastructure, where you're decoupling the underlying hardware layers from the software layers, you're virtualizing the infrastructure, creating the underlying infrastructure on which you can then orchestrate things. Now, that's a major transformation, and it really starts to touch every aspect of how traditionally networking has been done and how it needs to be done going forward. And that's a major transformation. Case in point, you see, I mean, if you think about the old paradigm, right? I mean, whether you're talking about reliability, high availability, 5 nines, or you're talking about performance characterization from a standpoint of certain levels of throughputs and SLA assurance, these things were very well understood in an appliance physical network function model. And none of these things we can lose or afford to give away as we migrate. So while we have to achieve same levels of service assurance, same levels of 5 nines, we now also have to learn how we're going to manage hybrid networks with physical network functions and virtual network functions, and then get to a point where the network really starts to innovate at the speed of software. That's where we need to get to. So bringing that agility. So all those things that we've done very well in the past, we need to preserve those and layer on top of it. And so it's a very fundamental shift, and that means that a lot of different elements in the technology need to come together. And there has been, I'd be very upfront to say, there's been tremendous progress that has been made. There's been a very strong momentum in the industry across the ecosystem. But at the same time, the complexity is there, and the industry is working its way through it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Closer to the as I said, to the implementation at scale. But this also needs a lot more work to be done at the integration and systems integration and more.
Yeah, I think obviously on the system integration level, because that does seem to be, that's going to be a huge challenge because like you said, I mean, even the hybrid network aspect of it, the ability to kind of run these two networks side by side for an extended period of time, probably, that seems like that alone is going to be a huge challenge. And for someone who's going in there, like yourself, a vendor going in there and trying to help operators through that progress, I mean, that seems like that's got to be a huge challenge because operators ideally do not want to have to run two networks for any sort of, I mean, that's the last thing they want to do is run two networks, obviously. That's not very cost efficient. But it's going to have to be there for a while, and they're going to have to kind of work through that and eventually make that switch. I'm guessing for you guys going in there, that's got to be a huge challenge in trying to manage that time frame and the technology aspects, and that whole part of it alone seems like a huge challenge.
Absolutely. And, I mean, apart from Greenfield, which, put those aside, which there are not many, the reality is there is no clean slate.
Yeah.
There is an existing infrastructure that has been built, and it's a physical network function-led infrastructure that we have. And the virtual network function-led infrastructure needs to operate side by side. And therein lies, one of the key challenges that need to be addressed. Now, to share with you, from a Tech Mahindra standpoint, we actually did a award-winning Catalyst project earlier this year at TM Forum, and at NEAT, we showcased that. It's our Recover First, Resolve Next closed loop control for hybrid networks. So what does that mean? We actually did two use cases. One was for fault management, and the other one was for performance management. And the objective was that as you move from physical network functions to virtual network functions, how do you manage hybrid networks? At the same time, in a virtualized stack, you can have faults getting injected either in the infrastructure layer or at VNF or anywhere. When the fault happens, how do you detect it? And then how do you initiate closed loop control recovery actions in an automated way? So we actually showcase that through VM migration from a fault isolation, fault recovery. Now, different use case from a performance management standpoint, where you have SLAs that need to be met. And so we actually showcase a virtualized EPC where we were looking at different quality indicators, KQIs, and monitoring. And if there was an SLA breach on any quality indicator, we would initiate a closed loop control by scale out, adding capacity in an automated way and creating new VMs and additional capacity on the infrastructure, and showing that you could do that in a hybrid environment where you can have physical EPCs, the physical PNF related EPCs, and yet have ability to create additional capacity and burst out using virtual network functions. But I think, and that was a catalyst we showcased at the forum. But the point is, and the broader thing that we wanted to achieve by doing that is, that's how the migration in the real world is going to happen. And that's what we are working towards, solving those kind of problems.
Got it. I guess as a telecom operator is looking at kind of surmounting, obviously these numerous challenges out there, I mean, I guess what advice do you give to them to say, to kind of work them through this? Because I'm guessing even just getting their comfort level has got to be probably a big part. I mean, just getting, the ops people comfortable with what's happening has got to be a big part of this. But I guess as they look at these challenges and surmounting these challenges, I mean, what do you recommend? I mean, is it just even just a basic mindset, or what's kind of what advice do you guys kind of give to these operators who are looking to make these big moves here to kind of really, like you said, kind of evolving their networks to something completely different?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think I would say to an extent, the operators realize that their current infrastructure is not going to continue to scale using the appliance model, the physical network function model, because that model is really, as we've moved to this data era, that model is breaking. It's really challenging the network economics. It's challenging sustainable network profitability over a long term. So I think that's well understood. So then, and I think that's good news, because the service providers themselves acknowledge this, and this whole transformation is CSP-led. So there's tremendous amount of market pull from them, and they want to get there. Now, when we work with them, one of the things we talk about, and I think there is no cookie cutter approach, because there are different service providers who have different approaches, and we work with those, right? There are certain service providers who have a very comprehensive view of network transformation, of how they are going after and looking at, and case in point, I mean, AT&T, for example, has publicly talked about domain 2 and how they're approaching it. So it's a very holistic view. Whereas we also see a number of other service providers who I would say take a little bit more of a crawl, walk, run approach and are looking at doing certain POCs. So when we engage with them, one of the things I always bring out is we, as a service provider, they have to start. And the starting point could be either you want to take a holistic view or you want to take it step by step. Either way, we have to start because the existing model is not scalable and is not going to meet the needs of future. Not only what at the rate at which the data has been growing, I would be remiss if I don't say that the next biggest opportunity is with Internet of Things. Yeah. And that needs an infrastructure that's not only elastic, that's not only agile, but that's also programmable. And that's key. So I think it's very important to start preparing that transformation, and it's a journey. It's not that that's going to happen in one foul sweep, right? So it's a journey, and we have to start. Yeah. That's how when we are working with the service providers, that's the approach we take.
That's a great point. I think I've heard that from a few other people as well. Is, they recommend, hey, I know this is a nerve-wracking thing. It's a big jump for the operators, but at some point they have to get in the water. They got to kind of really make that first step and actually just start. I mean, even if it means a fast fail approach, whatever it's going to be, but you at least got to at least see what happens in your network, because you got to get people comfortable with it. And yeah, you got to at least start somewhere and just start the process, because like you said, I mean, IoT and even 5G, I mean, those are technologies and services that are going to require the agility that virtualization can provide to really take advantage of those. And if you don't get those started, you're going to miss out on some opportunities there going forward.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, right, that maybe not all network functions are suited equal from a virtualization perspective. Yeah. There are, to your point of building the comfort level, there are some lower-hanging fruits, if I may put it that way. So if you take a look at the networking infrastructure and you break it up, you have control plane applications, you have data plane applications, you have media plane applications, and I think, and then you have a radio access network where you're doing a tremendous amount of signal processing and layer one computations. And if you take a look at that whole holistic view, I mean, clearly lots of IT applications, then within the network control plane applications, number of now data plane workloads with TPTK and SRIV accelerations, and if you bring them in the mix. I think these network functions and workloads are the low-hanging fruit, when it's becoming much more well understood, if you think from a problem perspective of what it takes to move them from a appliance physical network function model to a virtualized virtual network function model, right? So even from a starting point, I mean, there are easier problems to lead with. I mean, IMS is the biggest case in point. That whole domain lends itself very well to virtualization as an example.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, obviously, it does seem like, I know the operators who are already moving into the space are working in those parts already. I mean, IMS, VoLTE, things like that seem like prime ways to go. At least kind of get things off the ground and at least get your operations organizations comfortable with what's happening out there. That's a great way to start. There's not much of a negative impact. I mean, obviously, if something fails, you can kind of transition back if you need to. But those are definitely marked areas where you can kind of get your feet wet. And get used to at least what's happening in the network when it comes to this. So, I guess as you look, the standards part of this as well. I mean, talked a little bit earlier about Etsy's work in this, and a lot of organizations are working to kind of work towards the standards on this. Because I know with telecom operators, they like standards. I mean, they might not love standards, but they like standards. I mean, they like to have that assurance that what they're using in their network has some backup to it, or at least some common sense to it. As we look at, I guess, in terms of virtualization and the standards processes there, what's your view on how that's progressing? Because it does seem like there are so many different organizations that have popped up over the past 12, 18 months, working in different slices of standards. As you view kind of that process, how is that progressing? And do you think we're making some good headway in terms of getting that to a comfort level for operators?
Yeah, I think first of all, let me say this. I mean, standard bodies traditionally, typically have been slow. They've been worked through committees, and it's been challenging, and it's been the downside of standards. But we cannot, as an industry, even forget the upside. That it's those standards that create the ecosystem diversity and a very vibrant multi-vendor ecosystem, which is equally important for sustainable operations and sustainable network economics. So if you tend to think about that, so standards do have a role to play. But at the same time, there has been tremendous amount of mushrooming, if I may put it, of the standards and even open innovation bodies, right?
Yeah,
So you have from OpenStack to Open Daylight to OnLabs, ONOS to you have open research-related works. DPDK itself now find itself. There's been those elements, and not to forget TM Forum, Metro Ethernet Forum. I mean, everybody is looking at the problem because the problem is big. Now, I think if I go back to what I said earlier, we went from initiation to ideation, and the industry is still working its way through to get from ideation to implementation. If you think about it that way, then it becomes clear that we are right now in the stage of where there's a lot of innovation happening. And over time, from innovation to standardization, that migration with a number of technologies has happened. It will sort itself out. The good technologies, good solutions will win and consolidate. The others will fall off the wayside. And that's a process that we will move through. At the same time, I think standardizing too early will cut off innovation. Mm-hmm. And the challenge is if we lead and let the innovation continue too long, then it can create significant market fragmentation. So it's a balancing act of how do we achieve innovation versus standardization, right? And I think because the industry is still very much in this ideation phase, there's a lot of that happening. I think it's going to happen for I think still a couple of years. We're going to see this continue, and it works its way through, and then things will. The winners will become obvious, and then a lot of things will fall off the way and it'll sort itself out.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. So obviously, us in the media should probably be not quite so quick to say this is going too slow. I mean, obviously, like you said, this is a complicated process. Takes a long time. I'm sure you guys on the inside working on this stuff day in and day out realize that probably more than what we see on the outside. So.
Yeah, I mean, I shared with you, I mean, our contributions are across the board. We, as I shared with you, I mean, we did, for example, the TM Forum Catalyst to bring out a solution around hybrid network management and how do you do fault management and performance management in a virtualized world. We right now are doing work on core, on central office being re-architected as a data center in collaboration with OnLabs for the ONOS and the Atrium stack, right? So we as we continue to advance our SDN and NFV initiative, we embrace open ecosystem. We think there is a very key role that they play. There are some very compelling solutions coming out, and we are equally contributing to those efforts. And whether it's a Catalyst project or core, Tech Mahindra will continue to provide thought leadership as well as technology leadership in this space.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, maybe a final question here before we wrap up on the conversation here. I guess looking ahead over the next 12 to 18 months, I guess what challenges or what opportunities do you see out there in the market in terms of this continued advancement? Obviously, like you said, we're still kind of in these phases of getting stuff sorted out to an extent. But I guess as you look ahead over the next 12, 18 months or so, what do you see as kind of being out there as perhaps challenges, opportunities, things that might keep you guys up later at night, perhaps?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that I see in terms of achieving this network transformation is how do we bring that scale and how do we bring that speed overall to this network transformation, right? And that goes down to skill transformation, even things that we haven't talked about, but tools and processes and organization structures, because this is the way you build, operate, manage a physical infrastructure versus the way you will be building, managing, operating a virtualized infrastructure. This will transform tools, processes, skill sets, organization structures. It cuts across all aspects of how we've been thinking about building and operating network functions, right? So, and networking infrastructure. So I think that is the biggest challenge in terms of how we get there. In terms of opportunity, I think there are some very key opportunities, and I think we are going to see as an industry significant progress. For example, on the virtualization of the customer prem, on the CPE side, I think that's clearly emerged as a very compelling business case around that, both in terms of cost benefits, but also from a service agility standpoint. And we ourselves are actually working with our ecosystem partners around that on virtualized CPE solutions. So I think there's going to be a significant progress, I expect, in the next 12 to 18 months around that particular rollout as well. Last thing I would say is, broadly, based on our market engagement and engagement with a number of customers and all, I do also think that in the next 12 to 18 months, we will see a lot more progress being done on the NFVI, the network function virtualization infrastructure layer, because a lot of service providers are making those decisions, and it's very important to get that infrastructure layer right, so that then we can orchestrate different kinds of network function. And I think that 12 to 18 months, I look forward to seeing a lot more meaningful progress on those.
That sounds good. It's got to be good too, I'm guessing, from a vendor perspective as well, the fact that operators are on board with this. I mean, like you said, a lot of these guys are pulling it. I mean, they want this. AT&T, like you mentioned, Telefonica, SK Telecom, they're really driving. I mean, they're saying, hey, we want to do this. We're focused on this. We got resources. Come to us and help us do this. That's got to be a nice thing. As obviously in the past, legacy type systems, there's always the vendors perhaps pushing their solutions. Now it's the operator saying, hey, bring us stuff. We want this. Let's make this work. So I'm guessing for you guys, that's got to help in your long-term planning as well, to know you've got customers out there who really want this stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, yes. And as I said, most of the time it's been the vendor-led push of technologies. This time it's different. Yeah. It's a service provider-led market pull, because they do realize that the benefits are huge. We haven't talked about, and I think, I'll probably just mention in the past here, I think not only just from the virtual network function-led transformation, I think we will also see some good progress in the next 12 months or so around mobile edge computing, because I think that, again, becomes very critical for the service providers in terms of creating an infrastructure that enables them to offer new kinds of services and new kinds of capabilities on the mobile edge. So I think that's another thing that in the next 12 to 18 months we should be seeing some good progress around. And last but not the least, I mean, to your question, from a Tech Mahindra standpoint, we do see that it's a significant transformation. It has challenges, but it's also a significant opportunity. And that's why we're working hard to bring the skill sets, to bring the scale, and really speed up this network transformation.
Yeah, makes sense. And that you mentioned about the mobile edge part of it, the mobile edge computing part of it. That's a big, I know recently I've had a lot of conversations with people about that. It seems like that's kind of a growing part of this. And yeah, perhaps at another time we can have a conversation, maybe looking at that part, because I think that you're right. That's going to be a big aspect of this. And that's something that's definitely still developing, but the opportunities there seem pretty large as well. So perhaps we'll schedule another time here to talk, and maybe we can dig a bit into that as well. But Manish, we definitely appreciate the great insight today on this. Obviously, conversation we could spend another 2 or 3 hours on looking at the market. But we definitely appreciate the insight on this today. Thanks so much for taking the time and speaking with us on the topic today.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Sounds great. All right, we'll talk to you again soon. Well, thanks again for joining us in this week's NFV SDN Reality Check, and make sure to check us out again next week when we're scheduled to speak with Cloudera on CSPs adopting Apache Hadoop open source technology.
NFV SDN Reality Check with Dan Meyer is a production of RCR TV. To suggest show topics or to reach Dan, you can find him on email, dmeyer@rcrwireless.com, and on Twitter @Meyer_Dan. For more Dan, news on NFV SDN and everything wireless, find your way over to rcrwireless.com.